Prepping can be expensive when you're buying up gear and equipment and everything else related to it, especially in the more expensive departments of high end technology, electronics, tactical gear, anything along those lines. So, I wanted to develop 5 questions you should ask yourself before you buy those preps. So that way you know if you really need them, or that way you can at least try to prioritize things that might be a little bit more important. So, if you're asking why I sit like this, it's because my eyes, is this what you want to see? And it might be because I have Rh negative blood, but if you're a lizard person, hit the subscribe button down below because I need to figure out where our next colony is going to be. Now, the first question that you should ask yourself when you're going to go buy an expensive prep, something that's a little bit more money than usual, that I think is a good idea to verify before you move forward in that purchase, is going to be, can you live without it? And when I say that, I don't mean just live without it. I mean, can you survive without it? Because if you really truly need it, if it's water or food or shelter or any of the basics of survival, well, then maybe there's a good reason for why you need to get it. But if you can live without it, at what point of the priority chain does it actually fall on? And that's something that you definitely need to consider in case you're missing something in those more important departments, right? So, can you live without it? That's the first thing you need to ask yourself. Now, the second question you should ask yourself is, how long could I eat for if I make this purchase? And what I mean by that is, how much food do you have stored away already? And how much is that food worth compared to how much you're about to spend on this other piece of preparedness? If you only have 2 weeks worth of food set aside, but you're about to spend $1,000 on some high-end piece of technology, maybe your priorities are a little bit backward and you should definitely consider adding more food to your storage before spending that extra money. Because we all need to eat, and we know for a fact that during any emergency, you will still have to eat. Everything else is closer to being what if. But food is a necessity. And so ensure that everything you're doing at least has some sort of reasonable ratio compared to the amount of food you already have on hand. And I think it would be unwise to have 3 days worth of food and then be considering spending $1,000 on some high-end piece of security that might not come into play during an emergency anyway, right? So that's the second question I would ask myself. The third question, which goes right in line with the food question, is, do you have replenishable water? Now, having water stored up is a good idea, and having additional water on hand is always going to be beneficial. But do you have a way to get more water? Do you have access to additional water during an emergency, whether or not the power is on? Or do you at least have a route or understand where you can acquire additional water during that time? Or are you only relying on what you have stored, or are you only relying on what comes out of the tap? And that's something you should definitely be considering and prioritizing above just about anything else. You need water, and you're going to need a lot of water, and you will need to drink water much sooner than you'll ever need to eat. And if you're not worried about water, but you're out buying all kinds of other stuff, that's going to be very problematic for you in a long-term emergency. For example, I live on a well, so I have a backup power system to ensure that well can continually pump. I also have water stored, because who knows how long an emergency might last, and who knows how that power situation is going to turn out. So regardless, you still need to have a way to get more water even if you already have water stored. And you should be asking yourself if you have that goal accomplished before buying a bunch of other stuff that might not help you get that done. Because you know what? There's a good chance that other stuff isn't going to make a difference within 3 days, but not having access to water most certainly will. So, get water filters or ways to treat water, then have water stored up, and then also figure out how you're going to get more water once your stored water is gone. That's the question I would ask. Do you have replenishable water? And here, I want to make sure to clarify something really quick. I'm guilty of breaking these rules, so I'm sharing this with you from experience. I'm not saying that I've been perfect regarding any of this information. I'm saying that I should have done better, and I'm hoping that I can help other people do better as well. So just wanted to make sure to touch base on that really quickly, because I'm not perfect, but I've learned a lot by making mistakes, and I like to share those mistakes with all of you. Now, the fourth question that I would ask myself before buying more preps, right, is going to be, what's the likelihood of needing this item? And I think that's something that we need to have more honest discussions about here in the preparedness community, as well as in all the other communities that are adjacent to it, especially the firearms community, right? Because the likelihood of some of the stuff being needed is very low. Yet some of the things we invest the most money in have the least likelihood of being usable during an emergency. And that's where things get a little bit backwards sometimes. And that's really easy in the sense of trying to decide upon whether or not you need something by dictating the percentage of chance you'll actually use it. And once you figure that out, then you'll know whether or not you need to prioritize it, right? Now, there are some caveats here. Firearms are important. You need to be able to protect yourself during an emergency. No one else is going to do it for you. The likelihood of actually having to use a firearm in self-defense is still incredibly low, even during emergency events, unless maybe they last for a very long time, but we don't have the data for that necessarily right this second. But we do know that it's still incredibly low here in the United States of America, at least, for you to have to use a firearm in self-defense. But it's one of those items where if you need it, you most certainly need it right at that moment. And in general, especially if you're looking at some more budget-friendly items, they're not super expensive to where you're usually going to have to take out a second mortgage on your home just to afford one. So there are some caveats, but regardless, the probability points start coming into play when we start talking about more niche items, some of the higher end technological items, or some of the more CBRN related stuff, or the things related to maybe having a bunker or anything else along those lines, right? All of those things are good to have, and I would like to get more of them personally. However, I have to prioritize likelihood over practicality, right? Or over desire, I guess is what I was trying to say, because practicality and likelihood are actually the same. But one thing I definitely want to mention is that this is where people often lose the sauce, right? We think about having to do some kind of certain particular task that isn't necessarily realistic in the real world, but we prioritize it because we find it to be so concerning. And then we invest a lot of money and time and effort into something that will likely generally never come to fruition. So we have to be very honest about this exact question. What's the likelihood of needing this item? And there's a reason why you don't see lasers on all of my rifles, because although I have them and I have that capability, I don't think it needs to be a priority, especially in regards to every single one that I own having one, because that is a serious allocation of resources at that point in time, right? So ask yourself that question. Makes it a little bit easier to figure out. The final question, the fifth question that you should ask yourself when buying preps in order to decide if it's actually a good idea or not is, are you going into debt to do it? Right? And you can actually break this up into a few different ways. Like, are you already in debt and you should just be fixing that instead of doing this? Or are you going into debt for the wrong reasons in order to accomplish a goal that isn't realistic? Regardless, we all know debt is just bad. We don't want to have it, and I have too much of it, in all honesty. I mean, I have a mortgage on a home, I have an auto loan, and I have other debt that needs to be paid off. And that's one of the failures that I've made in my life, of not prioritizing that over other things. But obviously, many people fall in that same boat. And when you're buying something, you should definitely be asking yourself that question, because that is something that will be a ball and chain tied to your ankle for a very long time if you don't get rid of it and free yourself of it. So, personally, I don't suggest going into debt to accomplish some of these goals unless they are required assets. So for me, that's my home. That would be my vehicle. Yes, I could have gotten a older vehicle and not had debt on my vehicle. However, where I live and the proximity of the things that I need to go to being very far away dictates the level of reliability I needed in a vehicle. And the fact that I have a larger family made it so that I needed to get a vehicle of the type that I currently have. But of course, we can justify all types of things when it comes to debt if we really want to, or we could try our best to not be in it. So when you are deciding on acquiring that next big purchase, you should definitely ask yourself that question. And I fail at this on a regular basis. I fail at many of these questions on a regular basis, but I think they're still good guidelines. I don't have to be perfect to give you a good piece of advice. I can at least admit that I have faults, and I also am very aware of the fact that, sometimes I'm bad at this. But regardless, the information's still good, and one of the things I'm decent at is delivering information. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and share it in case you want to help somebody else maybe make better decisions when it comes to buying preps, because these questions, at least in my opinion, will help those people make better decisions. And I think it's something that I need to be better at, and that a lot of us probably need to be more honest about, especially regarding the likelihood of necessity question number 4. So, if you want to support the channel, go to magicprepper.com. There's a lot of interesting things there. There will be updates coming here soon, and I definitely recommend you check it out because, well, I'm putting a lot of new things there that you might not be aware of. And of course, there's always Subscribe Star. If you want to subscribe, it's $5 a month. There's a link in the description as well as in the pinned comment. And anything else you need from me at all, you know what to do. And besides that, it's going to be it for Magic Lizard.